All right, folks, I'm officially calling to order this meeting of the unofficial Jessica Tarlov fan club as the lone, sane, progressive voice on the Fox Propaganda Network brutally fact-checks her opponents once again on notions of crime in 2020 and President Biden's impeachment inquiry. But before we unpack all that, if you haven't yet, please hit that like, subscribe, and the alert bell. Maybe check out my Patreon. I'd appreciate the support. All right, again, you know the drill. We are the unofficial fan club of Jessica Tarlov. She has a hell of a job in front of her because she's outnumbered by the likes of Jesse Waters, Greg Gutfeld, Jeanine Pirro, and in this case, Martha McCallum, subbing in for Dana Perino, who was one of the moderators on last night's Republican primary debate, which was atrocious, by the way. And during this segment of the five, Jessica fact checks her right-wing co-hosts on crime in 2020 because Republicans misunderstand how time works. And then attention is turned to the first formal hearing of President Biden's impeachment inquiry. And Jessica, once again, in both of these clips, just crushes her right-wing co-hosts. So we're going to play the first clip, and then we'll unpack it together.
Resolution on border security, Kyrsten Sinema is going to be part of that. Those are things that Democrats can do without betraying our core values, and that would allow the Biden-Harris ticket to have a much better shot at winning. And it's going to be close. It's always going to be close. But I thought that was a really interesting
So pretend to be the middle ground, just like 2020.
No, it's not pretending.
It was. Yeah, but why? Just what happened to this country?
What do you mean
Biden pretended to be moderate, and look what happened. Look what we got.
Do you remember what this country looked like when that election happened?
Yeah, we had less crime.
No, you didn't. Actually, all of the Black Lives Matter summer of looting, as you would call it, happened under President Trump. That summer was
he caused it. I get it.
And
it was in Democrat cities. Coming up, dirty Democrats.
So you got Judge Jeanine trying to cut her off there, but Republicans do this all the time, folks. They have a lot to say about the George Floyd protests, the biggest mass social protest movement in the history of the United States. And yes, it is true. I know this phrase is, derided by a lot of people, but it is true when you consider 15 to 20 million participants in all 50 states across the span of 2 years, a year and a half, something like that. The vast majority of these protests were peaceful. And that does say quite a bit when you consider the disparity of the movement, how scattered and diffuse it was. It's an extraordinary achievement. And yes, there was looting, and yes, there was violence in a small subset of these, not to excuse it, but Republicans all the time overemphasize those incidents in 2020 and into 2021. But Joe Biden was not the president of the United States. Kamala Harris was just then a senator. She was not the vice president of the United States. Republicans do this all the time where they try to, they do it with the lockdowns with respect to COVID. They're like, Joe Biden locked down the country. Actually, the lockdowns occurred under Donald Trump. Joe Biden was not president and therefore wasn't in any way responsible for them. They do the same thing. So she was right to brutally fact check them in this respect. Now, we're going to play another clip here, and this is not Jessica Tarlov, obviously. This is one of the chairman of the three committees investigating President Biden. They're the three leads on the formal impeachment inquiry, a guy named Jason Smith. It's relevant to a clip we're going to play with Jessica Tarlov in the five, but because she references it, I want to play the clip in real time. Watch and brace yourselves.
The timing then of the August 6th WhatsApp message, why is that evidence of some wrongdoing?
I'm not an expert on the timeline. I would love to have President Biden and his family to tell us about all the timelines.
But if he's not the president or the vice president at that time, where's the wrongdoing? He wasn't even a candidate for president at that time.
He was a candidate.
On August 6th of 2017?
Apparently, what source are you with?
I'm with NBC.
So apparently you'll never believe us.
I'm not saying I don't believe you. I'm asking you a very direct question. You presented a piece of evidence that you say came on August 6, 2017, that demonstrates that Joe Biden was using political influence to help his son. If he wasn't a political figure at that time, the first WhatsApp message you put up, how does that demonstrate that there's some sort of political influence being put over him if at that time he's not an elected official?
I'm definitely not going to pinpoint one item. I think we've outlined...
You presented it. It was your first thing that you brought up.
So apparently you don't agree with it. So
it's not that I don't agree with it. I'm asking you to explain it.
I'll take the next question.
Yeah, that was profoundly embarrassing. That was a press conference held the other day, and it's relevant to this clip coming up with Jessica Tarlov. This is a guy, again, along with James Comer and Jim Jordan, who's leading the inquisition, the witch hunt against President Biden. And one of the first pieces of evidence he introduces is an alleged WhatsApp message from Hunter Biden in July 2017. Well, Joe Biden was out of office. He was no longer Barack Obama's vice president, and he had not yet announced his candidacy for the 2020 election. That wouldn't happen until 2019. So as the NBC reporter is pointing out, that is not proof of anything. Why are you presenting it as evidence? And you can clearly see that Jason Smith, he is so flustered because he doesn't understand his own timeline, because he doesn't care about the details. What kind of investigator doesn't understand or know about his own timeline? Think about that. We expect police detectives to understand timelines in crime all the time. Why would an investigator in this situation be unfamiliar with the timeline? Well, it's because they don't care about time. So with that in mind, I want to play this clip from Jessica Tarlov, again, from the same episode of The Five.
Jessica, last word to you. Feel free to make it about
Generous.
me.
I really liked your read.
Thank you.
How you went through that, because it was a long read. And sometimes I struggle with those things. Okay. I think that we all know how wire transactions work. So when you fill out the information of who you're wiring it to, you don't write Big Guy's house, Wilmington, Delaware. You put in your account numbers, right? It goes to Hunter Biden's account.
Mm-hmm. And the context for this, by the way, is that the Ways and Means Committee, again, where that Jason Smith guy he's the chairman of it, they produced evidence which said that there was a wire transfer which listed, President Biden, or then Joe Biden's Delaware home as the home address of Hunter Biden. So the transfer was to Hunter Biden, but when it came to the address, because you have to have an address listed for a transfer, Joe Biden's address was listed, except he was a resident. He was living with Joe Biden at the time because he was recovering from drugs. Anyway, again, that's the context.
And James Comer knows this. He also knows that Hunter Biden's personal account, which was with Wells Fargo, had been registered in Wilmington, Delaware. He, by the way, moved back in with his parents, as many grown men do when they get divorced, in 2017. So not only did he have his bank account registered there, he had his personal credit card, his Apple account, and his driver's license was a Delaware.
So you can bribe the son of the presidential candidate. That's fine.
First of all, this is going on that entire period when Joe Biden was not a candidate.
It was 2019. He'd already announced.
Yeah, I actually checked the dates.
He'd
On the
announced.
announcement. The money went to Hunter Biden. When you have the money going to Joe Biden, then you're going to have progress on
So you can bribe the family members.
And James Comer, again, is misrepresenting this case completely to the American public, because he wrote a letter to the White House in January making it clear that he knew that Hunter Biden's home address during this period was in Delaware. And I would add that Republicans are going to continue embarrassing themselves. Like the latest one, Congressman Jason Smith, I think he's from Missouri, this afternoon was giving a press conference where he laid out a timeline that, of course, was completely false. And an NBC reporter held his feet to the fire about it. And then he had to finally back down after he sputtered all over himself and admit that he's not a timeline expert. You can't have an impeachment and not be a timeline expert. And you can't have an impeachment based on
Democrats
wiring.
did that for twice.
So, again, great performance from Jessica Tarlov there. She's absolutely right on the facts. And you can see that Jesse Water has no refutation of it. I mean, he's interrupting. He's like, well, you can't, so it's okay to bribe the son of a politician. There's no legal or moral transitive law which says that if a child, an adult child, does something inappropriate or unethical or even illegal, that their parent is somehow responsible for it. Indeed, even if their parent is a politician, you actually have to establish a direct connection there, which Republicans have failed to do. And they're misrepresenting the facts in an attempt to effectively politicize the impeachment inquiry against President Biden. But anyway, great performance from Jessica Tarlov. They're having the first formal impeachment inquiry hearing today. If The Five has an episode today, I'm sure she's going to be all over it like white on rice. So I'm excited to see what's going to happen in the next few days.